Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Conquering Retirement. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio, we have two financial advisors from Northern Alliance Financial, based right here and serving the great state of Maine, Peter Hansen and Derek Hewitt. Peter, Derek, always a joy to be with both of you. How are you this week?
Thanks for saying that. You know, the weeks fly by. I can't believe we're here again.
I know, right? Well, and you are so busy. You've been meeting with a lot of folks. I know a lot of folks are calling off the television show, calling into the radio show as well. And then, of course, you have your live events. So never a dull moment for you guys, right?
No, it's we are busy either meeting with clients or educating, potential clients, prospects, just the people out there that need to understand what's going on. And we appreciate everything that you do as well with your background. And it's always great to be here.
Well, wonderful. I love this time with you. I look forward to it each and every week, and we thank you for joining us. This show is all about you and empowering you to make the best decisions possible with your hard-earned money so that you can conquer retirement. Now, that might be kind of strong languaging, but of course, this also ties into the book that your CEO has written, Conquering Retirement. Share a little bit more about that and just the inspiration behind that use of language, if you will.
Yeah, sure. You know, Lance Gilman, our CEO, is a retired lieutenant colonel, so has a very long established military background, and he's incorporated that into the book, Conquering Retirement. What he does is he draws some examples of some battlefield things that he's actually done. It's about strategizing. It's about putting plan in place and how plans change, and he puts that in his own wording in this book, and he draws that into retirement and really goes over a lot of different things that folks, going into retirement will run into or will need to think about.
Absolutely, yep.
Like many things with the military, right? There's structure to just about everything.
Yes.
Lance even talks in acronyms sometimes, but we know what he's saying. But what I mean by that is everybody that comes in, we've talked about this multiple times, there's structure to even that first appointment. Before we get into people's portfolio and or making any recommendation, we want to talk to them about their budget. We want to talk to them about Social Security, Medicare. We're going to talk about taxes. There's a tax ramification to every move somebody makes. We're going to have a conversation about long-term care. What happens if one or both of you end up in a facility needing long-term care or somebody to come in and help? Who pays for that? And then, of course, estate planning. Everybody that meets with us gets a complimentary visit with an estate plan. But that's a structure, and that's what Derek is talking about. It's a very structured, systematic approach to making sure that no rock is left unturned when, in fact, we're planning for your retirement.
Right, no rock left unturned. I think that's the perfect way to set up everything we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be going through some specific challenges that today's retirees are facing so that you can be confident that you can navigate those things successfully. The first thing up that we want to talk about today has to do with the concept of risk. Now, this is really interesting because a lot of folks aren't even aware of how much risk they're currently taking with their investments. Let's talk about first why that is and what you often see when folks come in and meet with you for the first time.
Sure. Yeah, that first complimentary visit is part of a portfolio x-ray, which means we're going to take a look at their current holdings to find out what their risk is.
First of all, I love that term, portfolio x-ray.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's an x-ray inside. There's lots of fees and things that don't need to be disclosed on people's statements. Therefore, they're not. Now, their current custodian is not withholding anything. They're not hiding anything. It's just that the SEC doesn't require everything be put on there. But let's do an x-ray and find out what is something called a 12B1 fee. What is the stress test on your portfolio? How would your portfolio perform in 2008 when the S&P dropped about 40%? So that's what we want to look at.
Yeah, the other thing about risk is that risk does change. And a lot of the clients that come in, their portfolio has much more risk, and it's because they never made any changes, because when they started their 401k or started working, it was 20 years ago, they were younger, and they should have had more risk because they had a longer time horizon is what we call it. And but as they're getting closer to retirement, it's time to adjust things, and it means adjusting the risk. And one thing we want to look at is what is their risk tolerance. I'll have anybody that comes in, I'll have them fill out a risk assessment to see where they are in their own words. They're going to fill it out. We're going to score it, and we're going to see where they are. And then I'm going to run an analysis on their portfolio, and I'm going to see does it line up. And so if they tell me they're aggressive and their portfolio is conservative, well, that doesn't line up. And so the only wrong answer is if it doesn't line up, and that's important. And a lot of times it's because they just have never made changes or adjustments to their plan, and they've been in the same 401k, and that's fine. That's fine. The whole point of a 401k is to accumulate your assets and to kind of set it and forget it. And that works. It's called a buy and hold strategy. It's passive. when folks come in to see us, they're getting closer to retirement. And now it's time to incorporate what we call a tactical management. And this is having somebody else's eyes on their portfolio to minimize risk.
And make that shift, if you will, right?
Kristen, I was just going to mention, there's 3 major phases to wealth management. And there's accumulation phase. That's when folks are young, contributing to their portfolios, not even looking at the market. Hopefully they're adjusted, so that they have more risk. After accumulation is preservation, the preservation phase. But before we can go into the 3rd phase, which is distribution, we have to make sure that we have dialed back some of that risk and or put in certain safety net safeguards into their portfolio to preserve what they have. So accumulation, preservation, and distribution. We're distribution specialists. That's what our niche is within the market, is that we deal primarily with folks that are getting ready to retire or are retired.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, Peter, because I think a lot of folks aren't aware of these different phases and the transitions that need to happen accordingly. And there's a lot of broker dealers out there, wealth managers that are really good at the accumulation years, right? When you're putting that money in and you're growing it and you want it to be as aggressive as possible because, to your point, Derek, you have time on your side. But again, that shift needs to happen when no longer can you afford to ride the roller coaster, so to speak, right, with your investments.
Yeah, and the other thing too is just looking at the spouses and making sure they're on the same page. And that we can't do, but we want to make sure you're on the same page.
You can
and
facilitate
we
the
can facilitate the conversation,
right?
and we want to just. I mean, we all have the same goal, and we want to maximize your retirement. It's common that the spouses are going to have a different risk tolerance.
Sure.
That's normal.
Yeah.
So let's find some middle ground and plan that way.
Absolutely. Well, and I think, too, this goes back to when folks first get their first job. So quick, fun story. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. So when my husband and I got married, he's a public school teacher. He had a 403B. And when I started looking and I said, how did you pick what you're invested in? He literally said, well, I don't know. I just looked at the guy next to me and put down what he put down, right? I think a lot of people are in that situation when they've opened those accounts when they're younger, never looked at them again because of that buy and hold, set it, forget it. All of a sudden, it's time to retire. They have no idea what they're in, how much risk they're taking, or understanding that a shift needs to occur so that they don't face potentially losing huge amounts of money right when it comes time to retire, which is what so many people experienced in '08, right?
Absolutely. More than just tactical wealth management, it's time to make sure that somebody has an understanding of how they're allocated. But more importantly, I mean, there's something called a target date fund. Within 401ks, you can go into a 2025 or 2030 or 2035 target date fund.
Those good old TDFs.
Right, which goes ahead and minimizes risk as time goes on. But nobody's tactically managing their account. There's a magic number when people are getting ready to retire. It's 59.5. When you reach 59.5, that's a magic number because now you have the ability, most likely, to go ahead and move your portfolio from your current wealth manager, which is your 401k or 403b, over to a wealth manager to take care of it. Because like Derek said, tactical wealth management is making sure that not only will you be getting the gains on the good times, but making sure we mitigate market downturn.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you can mitigate everything, but mitigation of 10% when the market goes down 20%, that's a huge win.
Yep.
That's called mitigating market downturn, and that's what we do.
The other thing, too, with the folks that are viewing today, a target date fund is a mutual fund that's in most 401k plans, employer plans. A target date fund is meant to give you a target date, let's say 2030, 2035, whatever it may be. But the thing is, as soon as you get closer to that target date, every year they're going to incorporate more bonds, more fixed income in there.
And the target date is representing what year you plan to retire.
You plan to retire,
right?
exactly. And the thinking is obviously the more they incorporate the bonds, the more safety they're going to add because you're closer to retirement.
Right.
The problem is that the bond market is starting to do a little bit better now, but the bond market had been doing so bad for so long that, in fact, the returns had not looked that great, and there was still significant risk there as well. So incorporating just bonds and not adding some defensive strategies in place maybe wasn't the best thing.
Right.
And it is good for folks who have no other plan or don't know what they're doing, stick in the target date fund. But if you want to sit down with an advisor like one of us and put a plan in place, we can certainly help with that.
Absolutely, and that's why you're offering this complimentary written financial plan to our viewers. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So for folks viewing today, what we're offering is an opportunity to come in, sit down, and look at your plan. If you don't have a plan, we'll help you put one together. What we'll do is we'll have you come in, have a conversation, bring in your stuff, and first of all, we're big on education, so we're not going to talk or recommend anything right there and then. We're going to educate ourselves as much as possible about what you have. From there, We'll often book a second appointment, and that's a chance to sit down and actually look at the portfolio analysis that we'll run. We'll do some Social Security optimization to see if we can help to put together a strategy that's going to maximize your Social Security benefit. And then, we'll talk about what that might look like if you would like our help going forward. There is no fee for that. What we'll do is we'll put a plan in place, and if we think we can benefit you, we'll talk about what that might look like and what that might cost you. But for those folks viewing today, just come in, let's have a conversation and start there. And for those folks, they also get an opportunity, or they will get this book right here. Great book, Lance Gilman, our CEO, wrote. He is a retired lieutenant colonel, and it's called Conquering Retirement. And so for those folks coming in for that analysis, we're also offering that as well.
Such a tremendous value. Derek, Peter, thank you so much. I'm excited to continue the conversation with you today about some important transitions and changes that you need to make as you're approaching retirement. But that number to call to claim your complimentary written financial plan is there on the bottom of your screen. Simply dial 877-241-7430. Or if you have your smartphone handy and you'd rather connect that way, we've got you covered. Simply pull it out. You can open up that camera app, point, click, and scan the QR code that you see there down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Northern Alliance Financial will reach out to connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting that way as well. We'll be back with more Conquering Retirement right after this.
Our team at Northern Alliance is very diverse in terms of the services that we offer.
We do take a team-based approach.
We carry multiple licenses so that clients can do everything within the Northern Alliance financial team.
If it has anything to do with retirement, that's what we specialize in.
Budget planning, tax considerations, Social Security strategies, risk management, long-term care, Medicare, health planning, as well as legal and estate planning.
We really are a one-stop shop.
There's Lance Gilman, Peter Hansen, Jeremy Barnard, myself. We do have a staff that is great.
In Maine, we have multiple locations to cover the vast array of the state.
You can come in and have a conversation in person. And a lot of people are looking for these days. Things after COVID have changed to more Zoom, phone call sort of things. And we'll do those things, but we appreciate and would rather have you come in person and have a conversation face to face like this.
We're pretty approachable, and we're going to listen to you. We're going to try to determine what your needs, your aspirations, those goals are, and then we're going to do everything that we possibly can to help you meet those goals.
It's lighthearted, it's carefree. We laugh like crazy. An atmosphere that I don't think is common in a lot of other practices.
We were talking about how well the team is bonding together, how similarly we all think in that what we do, we want to actually make a difference.
Average, everyday people helping average, everyday people.
We truly do put the client first.
Our mantra has been, when you take care of people, people take care of you.
Welcome back, Maine. You're watching Conquering Retirement. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with both Peter Hansen and Derek Hewitt from Northern Alliance Financial, and a great conversation we're having today about a lot of the transitions and changes that need to be made as someone is approaching and entering retirement. Guys, one of my mentors in this business always said that personal finance is often more personal than finance. And this next thing I wanted to ask you about has to do with the psychological transition, the emotional transition that people undergo when they decide it's time to retire, they stop working, and they enter retirement. Let's talk about that, because that's a huge part of your job too, is helping folks navigate that emotional component.
Yeah, I find oftentimes we're telling them what to expect only because we see it all the time. Now, I'm only 51. Derek isn't anywhere near as old as I am.
But you
even.
don't look it, so there you go. You have that going for you.
That's good to hear. But yeah, we have to prepare them for when that paycheck stops coming in. There's a bit of anxiety there. When you actually retire, do you have a pension? More than likely, you probably don't. How do you create a pension for yourself? How is it that you take this nest egg of assets that you have, including your home, and make that last the rest of your life when you don't know when your expiration date is? That's really what we're preparing them for. When people say, we'll ask them, what do you plan on doing when you retire? Are you going to get a second job? And oftentimes they'll say, oh, I'm just going to take it easy for a year. Within 3 or 4 months, they're back to doing something because they're so used to being busy all the time.
Yeah, it's hard to cut it cold turkey, right?
Yeah, and they miss the camaraderie from a workplace and or their peers. There's a lot to it, and that's, and believe it or not, it's a bit of psychology that we have to go through oftentimes in preparing people for what to expect, because they don't know. They've never done it.
Right, yep.
When someone comes in, oftentimes they are, if they're looking to retire, they often, what I get is, I don't think we can You know, and oftentimes when I hear that, it's usually the opposite. And then sometimes when I think we're ready, when they say we're ready, I think we can, then sometimes it's the opposite then as well. So we do a deep dive and look into everything. But I have good clients of mine. This happens often. They came in before, they were clients and, wanted to retire, but weren't sure if they could. And so we helped with everything. We're a holistic planning firm. We can do and help with everything. So if I can't do it personally, as far as estate planning, we're going to point you in the right direction.
Right.
But they came in. We were able to help them retire. They are retired and happy, traveling. They're nomads right now. They're going from place to place and they're renting and just, in an RV going across the country and enjoying it. And I was able to help them do that. One of them is of Medicare age, so we were able to connect them with a Medicare agent to help with Medicare because the gentleman that was of Medicare age, he was holding the employer plan and they were both retiring at the same time.
Okay.
So the spouse would need access to a plan as well.
Right.
So we connected her with a health insurance agent as well to help out with that, put together an estate plan. So we helped with everything. And then they were overwhelmed. And at the end, they were smiling and happy. And that's what we do. And that's what we try to do.
Well, and I love that because I think for a lot of folks, it's almost giving them permission to dream again. There's so much of our identity that can often be tied up in what we do for a living and during our working years that a lot of folks haven't even thought through what they want retirement to look like. Some people don't want to end working. They really like what they are doing. Some people can't wait to turn in their notice, right? So every situation is different, and it's knowing how to make sure the right financial plan is in place to achieve whatever objectives and goals that person has.
That's the number one most rewarding part. I'll speak personally for myself, is when folks come in, and Derek mentioned, they say, gosh, we even have enough? Here's what we'd like to do. Is this feasible? Is this possible? Given that we're independent, and a bit agnostic as to what vehicle or what fund we're going to use, chances are we can go ahead and put a plan in place to make that happen. And the plan that we start off with organically changes as the client's life changes. This happens all the time. Unfortunately, we'll have a mishap. Somebody might pass away, or they get their parents might pass, and then go ahead and they get a little bit of a windfall. What do we do with that? But the plans that we make organically change as their situation changes.
Right.
But we have to set the precedent as to what to expect.
Yes.
For example, market downturns. For example, the home that you have, do you have a bedroom on the first floor? A lot of people aren't thinking that. Is this your forever home? That's a term that we have to use now.
Right.
Or should you look at downsizing?
Right.
Because these are the things that we're talking about with just about everybody that comes in.
Yeah. And I'm sure you all are the first person that a lot of people call, the clients that you work with, once you've built that plan, when, heaven forbid, life happens, a spouse passes away, or your aging parents, and all of a sudden you have that inheritance in that example. I think that really, that can bring a lot of comfort to know I have someone in my corner who I can call, who's going to help walk me through this, who knows what I need to know and what I need to do. And there's just such beauty in that, knowing that you're there for them.
Yeah, I actually had a good client, well, it's still a good client of mine, and she came about because her husband, who was with stage 4 cancer, and he came in and they didn't have a lot of assets to manage. They had some questions, but he had a life insurance policy. And I think what he was doing, I know what he was doing now, was kind of finding the right firm to work with. So he knew his time was limited, and when he wasn't here, it was a substantial life insurance policy, and he wanted someone that he trusted to help with his wife.
Wow.
And
what a gift.
so that did happen. I got that call, and I was able to manage that. We were able to replicate his income and at least help her with that aspect of things. Obviously, she loses her husband. That's never an easy thing to deal with.
Right.
But I was able to help her with all that, and knowing that they trusted me, specifically he trusted me to help out with his wife and help her plan things when he wasn't around, really that means a lot.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so rewarding. Well, and I've said this many times when I've talked to folks about getting a solid plan in place, especially for married couples. When you're grieving, that's not the time, on top of everything else, that you want to be left with a mess in your lap or trying to figure out all these things. There is such peace of mind. It's never fun to think about, right? I think that's why a lot of people put it off. They don't want to think about what happens when one spouse passes away. But that is such a gift you can give the ones you love the most when it's all written down, it's there, it's buttoned, locked and loaded, so that when the inevitable happens, they have a plan in place.
On the last, I think it was the last show, Kristen, you mentioned the sources of the folks coming in to see us, from our TV show, our radio show.
Live events, right?
Live events. But the number one source is referrals. The number one source of people coming in is referrals from our current clients. And that's a testament that makes us feel good that we've been doing well enough with the right amount of people where they're referring their friends, their family members to us for situations like that, so that when the inevitable happens to a family, they've got a plan in place. They know what to expect. They know who to call. They know where the money's going to come from. That is the second most rewarding position that we have, given that we can watch people go ahead and live out their retirement. But when the inevitable happens, they've got a preparation plan. They've got not a plan B, but something set in place, that a mechanism to go ahead and take care of them.
Yes, and what a great testament to you and the entire team of Northern Alliance Financial. I know, of course, you all are here with me this week, but you've got other team members. Just for presence for viewers who might be newer to you, exactly where you all are located and who's where, serving this incredible state of Maine. Yeah,
so for these viewers, we are in the entire state of Maine. We cover the entire state. Obviously, you know, it is a big state. Peter and I are more southern Maine, a little bit into central Maine. We also have our CEO, Lance Gilman, who covers a lot of the area. We have Blake, Cameron, and Jeremy as well. They handle central and northern Maine. So we've got the state covered, and we're running retirement workshops all over the entire state. We're doing the radio show, the TV show, so we have a lot of education events going on in person, or if people would prefer to watch on TV or listen to the radio, we have that as well. So we have you covered.
Lots of different access points for sure.
Yeah, you can go right to nafinancialadvisors.com to find that out. We have recordings of our TV show, as well as there should be an updated list. Now, we just formed this list of all the upcoming workshops.
Wonderful. Yep. Again, that website is nafinancialadvisors.com. Of course, that stands for Northern Alliance Financial. But again, if you would like to go ahead and get started on your journey and claim your complimentary written financial plan, simply call that number on the bottom of your screen, 877-241-7430, or you're also welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
When interest rates are low, you might be able to refinance your home, your car, even your credit cards. But when interest rates go up, it may make sense to refinance your retirement. Higher interest rates could provide income opportunities you may not even be aware of. What works for you in your portfolio during low interest rates may not work for you when interest rates are high. Find out if a retirement refi could work for you. Call today for your complimentary Refi Your Retirement.
Welcome back to Conquering Retirement. I'm Kristen Oakley here with both Peter and Derek from Northern Alliance Financial, serving the entire state of Maine. And this has been a really rewarding show with you guys, just to talk about some of the different transitions that folks go through that they may not be thinking about or aware of ahead of time when it comes time to retire. I want to go back to that really powerful story you shared, Derek, about the client who had terminal cancer and was passing away, knew he had a huge life insurance policy, wanted to make sure that once he was gone, it was going to be carried out well for his wife, with someone that he trusted, and that's obviously how he had gotten connected with you. This is a perfect segue to talking about the legacy planning component, which I think a lot of folks find estate planning, legacy planning pretty overwhelming. What you all do at Northern Alliance, though, is you are able to do that in-house. You have estate attorneys you've partnered with. Talk a little bit about the services you offer that really paint the picture of this comprehensive, holistic financial planning process.
Sure. Everybody that is coming in, of course, I've mentioned this before, but we're going to talk about their budget, talk about Social Security and help them plan for that. We want to talk about Medicare, what's the difference between Medicare Advantage and Medicare Supplement, what's going to be right for you. Of course, we want to talk about estate planning. Now, we're not estate planning attorneys, but we work with many different firms that do estate planning, so that we want to make sure that the financial plan is on the same page as the estate planning firm, and to make sure that the two are talking to each other. As well, we want to incorporate CPAs if in fact that's needed and warranted. So the holistic plan means that your legal, your financial, and your accounting is all on the same page. And more often than not, we'll have folks coming in asking, do you folks work with estate planners? Because we want to get this all done at once. And that's why we partner with the firms.
That actually, we have a joint client where we worked. I'm just thinking, I know he's thinking the same clients, and we put together a plan, partnered with our estate planning attorney that we partner with. And what happened was, these clients are lucky enough to be in a situation where they they're never going to outlive their money. They're never going to spend their money. They know that, or they're never going to spend all of it or close to all of it.
Right.
And they, in fact, they don't even want to take out their RMDs. They wish they didn't have to.
Right, those required minimum distributions, right? Yeah.
But they need a long-term care in place plan. Now, they're a little bit too old for traditional long-term care, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense in their situation. But what we did is we worked with an estate planning attorney to, this estate planning attorney put together a irrevocable trust. And so what happens is each year they're taking out those RMDs. We're taking them out we're managing them, but we take them out, we put them into the irrevocable trust, which we're also managing, and of course withhold taxes. That's the only reason the RMDs are required, obviously, for viewers, is they want the tax money, the government, that is.
Right, yeah.
And we built up quite a bit over 3 years with them, and that is protected from, nobody can go after that. They can use it for long-term care. It's irrevocable. They have their daughter as the trustee. So technically, they are no longer the owners of that. And that's going to help to fund their retirement. It's going to actually save some of their assets as well, because now we can start to use that, and the assets can be passed down as a legacy.
Wow. And what an important strategy that I think a lot of folks wouldn't think to use an irrevocable trust for those very things, right?
Yeah. There's a lot to it, though. And that's why we pass that off to the estate planning attorney to put that in place and make sure that that makes the most sense. But this is where, we sort of, we collaborate and come up with a plan together based on our areas of expertise.
Right.
There's so many firms that don't deal with that because they don't get paid for it.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, talk about that.
Well, for example, we're going to run a Social Security report for everybody. We don't get paid for that, but we want to make sure that we understand and they understand what's the best way to maximize their Social Security, so we know how to draw down their assets. We don't get paid for passing off Medicare to Medicare advisors. We work with Medicare brokers that work with every plan available in the state. We don't get paid for that, but we want to make sure that our clients are protected with health insurance.
Yes.
We don't get paid for making the recommendation to send them over to the estate planning firm or the CPAs. But again, if we're going to call ourselves holistic, that's what that means.
Yes.
That we're going to make sure that we have a comprehensive plan for every person,
Aspect,
even though we only manage the assets.
Right. And you're doing it because as fiduciaries, it's the right thing to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that makes such a difference for sure.
It's a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we only have less than a minute. This time goes by so quickly, but what are some parting words that you would share with our viewers regarding these important transitions to retirement that we've talked about today?
Well, if you're watching the show today, we suggest that you give a call. For everybody that does call, what you can expect is that we're going to ask you to come in. Well, you're going to have to ask to come in, and we're going to invite you in. We're going to ask that you bring in your statements. You come up with a bit of a budget. What are you spending money on now? What do you predict it'll look like later? What are some of your goals and your plans? And then we're going to go ahead and run a portfolio analysis on your current holdings to see how well that looks. From there, everybody that comes in, we're also going to help you with Lance's book called Conquering Retirement. Lance, a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. By reading this book, you're going to get a structure of what that first plan is going to look like.
Wonderful. Peter, Derek, thank you so much. We love you, Maine. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on Conquering Retirement.